Welcome back friends to another session of finite element methods in fluid mechanics. We have been looking at the finite element formulation of the linear heat conduction. So, today we will review it a little bit and look at its implementation. Then in the second part of the lecture we will see what happens if we have a vector unknown, what are the changes that take place in the formulation and how do we implement that. So, let us begin by first reviewing what we have done for the linear heat conduction. U is the temperature field and we talked about the flux Q. So, this is the heat flux, and using the Fourier's law we said this is minus K, which is a conductivity matrix, times the gradient of U. So, U is a scalar field and Q is a vector field. We wrote down the strong form and I will write it for you very briefly. We said that given a heat source F, which is a real valued function defined on the domain omega and it is real valued, and some kind of boundary conditions. So, G is the Dirichlet type boundary condition defined on gamma g, which is again a real valued function, and H is the heat flux condition. So, it is defined on gamma h, again a real valued function. I must find a U that is defined on the closed domain omega bar and of course a real valued function such that I satisfy the heat equation, which is essentially divergence of Q is the heat source. This is to be satisfied on the domain omega, and then I have two boundary conditions, a Dirichlet type which is on the temperature field. So, that is U equal to G on gamma g, and I have a Neumann type condition on the heat flux, which is minus Qn, or I had written it as, so Qn can also be written as Q dot n. This is H on gamma h. Then we proceeded to write down the weak form of the problem, and for that we defined a few function spaces. So, we defined S and V, the two spaces, and again we said that given F, G, H as defined above, I must find a U that belongs to this space S, and I will define this space very shortly, such that for all W's that come from this space V, I must satisfy the following condition, and the condition is very simple. It is essentially A of W U, this is equal to W F plus W H on gamma. Okay. So, these are a few terms that we had defined. So, first let me begin by defining for you the function spaces. The function spaces are S is a space of all functions U such that U are H1, and I must satisfy the boundary condition U equal to G on gamma g. Similarly, the space V consists of the functions W such that W also are H1 and W is identically 0 on gamma g. Okay. And then we had defined these operators. So, just for the sake of completeness, let me define for you what is A W U. this was actually a very simple operator which simply said this is integral of gradient W transpose times k times gradient of u d omega. And then we can define the other inner products also. So, we have the strong form, we have the weak form, and we were able to show that the strong form is actually equivalent to the weak form. Okay. Next, we took an approximation and we came up with the Galerkin form, and we said Galerkin form is an approximation to the weak form. So, we introduced finite dimensional spaces which were SH, and this is a subset of S. We also introduced VH, which is a subset of V. Then starting from the Galerkin form, we derived the matrix form. So, we had the matrix form, which actually we denoted by this notation M, and I am not going to write down the whole thing for you, but essentially it said that you must form K and F, and then D represents the solution. So, implicit in this was the assumption that my solution u, which is a function of x, is actually given as a summation of n a, which are the basis functions. These are functions of x times dA, and A belongs to the set eta, where eta is the set of all the nodes. Similarly, in fact this was UH, similarly WH of x was given as summation A belonging to eta minus eta g NA of x CA. So, we said that NAs, these are finite element functions, and we also referred to them as the basis functions. So, the idea is I can form K, I can form F. K is the stiffness matrix, F is the force vector, and once I know this equation system, I can solve for D as K inverse F and get my solution. Once I know D, then I can plug it back into this relationship here and get my solution UH. Okay. So, at the end we have reduced a problem which was given in terms of a partial differential equation into a system of linear equations which are coupled, and we can just form K and do some kind of an inversion and get back the solution D. Okay. Now, the whole exercise was how can we implement this in an efficient manner. Okay. In fact, if you do not want to worry about efficiency, then actually you are able to now solve a scalar problem in 2 and 3 dimensions, of course a linear steady problem, and you know enough about finite elements now to go ahead and solve it. But we want to look at some efficient ways. So, in the last class we looked at some ideas of assembly. So, we said that if I look at the K matrix, then this is a large matrix, and I can actually go over all the element subdomains. So, if I go over a summation of all E, then I could write Ke as this. And if you recall, Kab is actually given as integral of gradient of Na transpose K which is the conductivity matrix, times gradient of NB d omega, and the integral is over the domain omega. We have now introduced K A B E, which essentially is the same integral, but the domain of integration is omega E, and of course everything remains the same. Likewise, we can introduce F and write F as a summation of element level force vectors. We then realize that these KE's and FE's are not full matrix, rather they are very small matrices, and we can store an element level version of them. So, we realize the following, that only a small part of KE and FE are non-zero, and we store only that part. So, we introduce the idea of the local element. So, we said let there be this concept of an element, and suppose it has any n number of local nodes. And we looked at some example. So, the example we gave was, suppose I have a quadrilateral kind of an element. This has NEN is 4 because it has 4 local nodes, and therefore I can talk about an index A which goes from 1 to NEN. Similarly, if I talk about, let us say, a triangular element, a linear triangle, in this my NEN is 3, okay, and I gave you some more examples. So, the idea is that instead of storing these KE's and FE's, which are actually very large matrices, we can now store KE's at the element level, and we came up with the following notation. We said KE is actually of, it has these elements K, A, B, E, and the size is NEN cross NEN. So, if it is a quadrilateral element, then we are talking about a 4 by 4 matrix. Similarly, my FE is given as FEA, and the size is NEN rows and 1 column. Just for completeness, let me write down for you the explicit matrices that we had derived. So, KABE was actually A of NA NB at the element level, and more explicitly it was an integral over the element domain omega E times gradient of NA transpose, the conductivity matrix times the gradient of NB d omega. Okay. So, you can see this is going to be a 4 by 4 matrix if NEN is 4. A goes, so both A and B, they are from 1 to NEN. Similarly, I could write down what is FAE. This consists of 3 terms. One is from the source, the heat source term, and the other 2 are from the boundary conditions. One term is from the Dirichlet and the other is from the Neumann conditions. So, let me write it for you. The first term is very simple, Na times F d omega. So, this is from the heat source, and then the next one is from the Neumann condition, which is actually the heat flux condition. and that is given as Na times H d gamma, and the last one is from the Dirichlet boundary condition, which is 1 through NEN K A B E G B E. And I had explained them in a little bit of detail in an earlier session. You can review those notes that you have. Okay, so we have the element level matrix, stiffness matrix, and the element level force vector, and now we can assemble them. So we came up with the idea of an assembly operator, and the assembly operator works like this. So if I want to form the K matrix and the force vector, then this can be written as the assembly of 1 through number of elements K E, and likewise F is the assembly of 1 through NEL F E. Okay. So the point to be noticed is that K and F are at the equation level. So if I have a total number of NEQ equations, the size of the K matrix is NEQ by NEQ, and this has NEQ rows and of course one column. These are element level matrices whose size are going to be dependent on NEN, the number of local nodes per element. And now for each element I have to figure out where do those entries go into the big K. Okay. So for that we had come up with some arrays, some data structure. So let me review that for you. So we are talking about three sets of quantities. So there are nodes, there are elements, and there are equations. When I make a grid, so when I make a mesh or a grid, it essentially consists of two of these arrays. I have a set of arrays, nodes. So nodes, which means if I have nodes going from 1 through N and P, then for each node I must know what is the location of that node. That means I am talking about, if the index is A, then I am talking about x A, and A goes from 1 to N and P. Okay. So that is the first thing. The second is the elements, wherein I would like to know which of these nodes make an element. So what nodes make an element? And this is known as the connectivity array. Typically in a finite element program, we would say that there is an array called the IEN array, and it has got two indices. The first index is actually the node number, so I will call it A, and the next index is E. A goes from 1 to NEN, and E goes from 1 to NEN. So what is being said is that for each element I can circle through the number of local nodes it has and then find out what is the global node number, and these are the global node numbers. So the idea is very simple. I create a set of all nodes and I number them 1 through NNP, and then I try to form elements out of this list of nodes. Okay, so that is my IN array. So the outcome of IN array is actually going to be A, which of course varies as 1 through n and p. So, that is the first quantity that I generate, a mesh. The second one, that maybe I call this as A. The second one that I generate is equation numbers. These also are going to be labeled from 1 through NEQ. So, this is a little bit interesting. So, I have NNP number of nodes, okay? And now I can ask myself, how many equations will I generate? If you will recall, I had this set eta. Eta was the set of all nodes. So, this consists of 1, 2, all the way to NNP. Then I made another set which is called eta G, which is the set of nodes on which I have assigned a Dirichlet boundary condition. These nodes do not have an equation, because here the temperature is known to me, it is an assigned boundary condition. So, I must take the complementary set. So, for equations I must take the set eta minus eta G and assign the equation numbers. So, that is what we will do for the equation number. We will go through all the nodes. We will first mark those nodes which are Dirichlet nodes and they do not have an equation number. The unmarked nodes will now have an equation number and we will assign them one by one, whatever is the next available equation number, give them a token, and finally we would end up with NEQ number of equations. Okay. The last array that we would like to define is the LM array, which is the location matrix array, which essentially tells us that if I am in a certain element and I go through all the local nodes of that element, then where should those entries go into this global equation system. So, that is the LM array. So, I will now take an example and I will try to illustrate these arrays to you.